Alright guys, so we're going to get started here, and I basically just have an Edge Ledger underscore website folder that's completely empty, and I open that within VS Code, so you're going to want to do the same. And then in this lecture you'll find an image resources zip file, so you want to unzip that, and we just want to grab all the images that are here, and we'll copy these into our Edge Ledger website folder. We want to create a folder called IMG, and we want to paste those images in there. Okay, and then if we go back into VS Code, you can see we have our images to work with. So let's create our structure here. We're obviously going to need an index.html, and this is the only HTML page we need because this is a single page website. Everything is on one page. We just have different areas that the menus go to, and this is common. I'm sure you guys have seen this before, and it's actually easier because you don't need as much copy, as much markup or content, I should say. You know, if you just want one section to have a paragraph and some list items, that's fine, and you don't have to think of all this content. And people don't want a ton of content to have to read through. They want everything just very simple and easy to read and understand, and I think having single page websites like this really helps with that, rather than them having to search through all these pages. So let's put in our boilerplate here. Actually, let's create the rest of the file structure. We need a CSS folder, and in CSS we're going to have a style.css file. We're also going to have a mobile.css file, and we're going to have a widescreen .css because I want to style the icons differently depending on if it's on a widescreen. And then we're also going to have a JS folder, so JavaScript, and we're going to have a file inside there called main.js, which is going to have the JavaScript for the Google map as well as the smooth scrolling. Because we can't do that, we actually need a little bit of JavaScript for that. For the smooth scrolling, we're going to use something called jQuery, which is a JavaScript library to do all sorts of things. Animation is pretty much the only thing that I would use jQuery for these days. So something like this smooth scrolling is much easier with jQuery. But we'll get to that later. So let's close all these up except for index. And then we're going to continue on here. So for the title, I'm just going to say Edge Ledger Financial, and let's put a pipe character, and then we'll say accounting and investment. Okay, let's put all of our CSS files. So we'll say link tab or link enter, and I'm going to say CSS/style CSS, and I'm going to copy this. So Shift Option or Shift Alt on Windows down twice. This first one I'm going to change to mobile. The second one I'm going to change to widescreen. And we need to add media queries or media attributes for mobile and widescreen. So let's say screen, and we want a max width of 768 pixels. Okay, and then for widescreen, let's do media equals screen, and this time we want to do min width, and we want 1100 pixels. So this will only kick in when the screen is bigger than 1100 pixels. Okay, and we're also going to be using Font Awesome. So let's head over to fontawesome.com and click this button here and grab the link so that we can incorporate icons. We'll paste that in there, and our head should be all set. So let's go ahead and open this up, and we're just going to have a blank page. We haven't added anything yet. So we're going to start with the navbar. Obviously we're going to go top to bottom, and I put the navbar outside of the showcase, outside of this header, with the idea of showcase. And the reason for that is we're using a sticky navbar, and if we put it inside of the showcase or in the header here, what's going to happen is once we reach the bottom, it's going to disappear because it's basically stuck inside of its parent. So we don't want this to have a parent. So we want to put the navbar above the showcase. Okay, so let's go into body, and let's do a nav tag, and whoops, we want to put an ID of navbar, And we want inside here in H1, we'll give it a class of logo. And inside this H1, as you can see, we have an icon, and then these are both going to be green, so we need a special class for that. So let's do, let's say span. We'll give this a class of text primary. And inside here, we want to put our icon, so I with the class of FAS, and then another class. This particular icon is FA-book-open, and we want the word, after the icon, we want the word edge, and then outside of the span, we want the word ledger, because only edge should be green, so ledger. Okay, so that's our logo, and then under that we want our navigation, which will be a UL, and we want 4 list items with links. So we'll say list item. We'll use Emmet here, so curly braces. We can put in the content, which will be an A tag. We'll just have this go nowhere. And then we want 4 of them, so we're going to say times 4 and hit enter. Okay, and if you don't like Emmet, if you don't want to do that stuff, you can simply type it all out, but I think Emmet makes it much more faster, much more efficient, and you'll get used to it. So home, let's do what, who, and contact, and then for the links here, they're just going to go to the ID home, the ID of what. Okay, so these will be sections, who, and contact. All right, now home, as you can see, it brings us all the way up to the top. So I'm going to put the ID of home on the body. Okay, and this will work even without JavaScript, but it will just kind of click down. It will just go, right down. It's not going to have this smooth effect. To do that, we're using the jQuery animate method. But for now, it's just going to kind of click to that area. All right, so let's see. We have our Navbar, so I'm just going to put a comment here and say Navbar, and if we take a look, it's going to look horrible. What I want to do is work on basically each component at a time. So we'll do the Navbar, then we'll move on to the showcase, then this area, and so on, and we want to style it as we go. So let's jump into style.css. And we'll most likely do the responsiveness after we get the main style down. So in style.css, let's first add like our base styles, our core things that don't pertain to specific classes and stuff. So body, links, asterisk, we want to add a reset. But first thing we want to do is implement our font. I'm actually using the Roboto font, which is not a regular font. So we're going to go to Google or fonts.google, and let's search for Roboto. And right here, I'm going to click the plus sign, go down here, click on that, and I'm actually going to import. I'm going to choose this, and I'm going to import it into our CSS file. So you can either do that, or you can bring it in as a link tag in your HTML, but I'm just going to go ahead and just do that. Okay, and once I do that, I should be able to use font family Roboto. So for our body, let's add in that. Now I'm going to add a little CSS reset here. We want to make sure our box sizing is border box, and then I want to just zero out all the margin and padding. Okay, so we're resetting the margin and padding for everything. And then links. So for links, I'm just going to remove the underline. So text decoration, underline. And I want to add a little bit of margin back to the paragraphs, because remember, when we add our reset, it takes away margin and padding from everything. So for paragraphs, let's do 0.75 rem on the top and bottom, and 0 left and right. Okay, so if we take a look, it looks like this. Let's see. So next thing I want to do is let's take care of the text primary class. Remember, we wrapped this in text primary. Let's put a space after that icon. So right here, we'll put a space, and that pushes that over a bit. So I'm going to go right here and I'm going to say utility classes. Let's do text primary. And for a text primary, we're going to do a color. And the primary color is going to be 93CB52, which is going to be that green color. All right, and if I save that, we take a look. Now that's green. Okay, now let's deal with the navbar. So let's see, we'll go right under here. Let's say navbar, and the navbar itself. Let's add a background of 333. Okay, so if we save it, it's going to look like that. You know what? I want to show both at the same time, so I'm gonna just shrink this down a little bit. That should be good. Okay, so we have a background. Anything that's not a link, we can add color white. Okay, so if I save this, it's not going to change the links because that's a separate color. And I want to position this sticky, so I'm actually going to do position for the first value here. And let's say sticky, and we want to say top 0. That's where we want it to stick. So when we scroll, it should stick to the top. Now I want this to be flex because we want the logo over here, we want the menu over here. Now remember, in the hotel site we used floats, and we're not using floats anymore. So let's add right here a display of flex, and watch what happens. As soon as I do that, now they're aligned this way. Not the list items, but the whatever is the child of the navbar, which if we look is the H1 and the UL. There's two children. Okay, what is in those children is irrelevant. These are the flex items, the nav and the UL, so those get basically floated horizontally. Now I want this over here, right? So remember the justify content property? What that does is it aligns things horizontally. So I'm going to use space between because I want the space to be in between both of the flex items. So let's go ahead and I'll just choose it right here, space between, and save. And now that gets pushed over to the side. So let's see. Another thing I want to do here is I want to add a z-index. So a z-index is it's basically the position. I know we went over this back a while ago, but it's the higher the number, the closer to the screen, the closer to you it is. And I want this to always be on top of everything when we scroll down. So I'm going to put a z-index of 1, and that should do it. Unless we set something else to z-index of 2 or higher, then this should go over everything else. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. And then I'm also going to add just a padding value of 1 rem. So in this case, 1 rem is 16 pixels because we haven't touched the root HTML font size, and that's what rems are based on. Next thing we want to do is the UL. Okay, now the UL is also going to be flex because we want these to align horizontally. So let's say display. Okay, remember, no more floats. Display flex, save. There we go. And then I'm also going to do align items to the center. Okay, so it kind of puts both of the logo and this at the same level here. And let's take away the bullet points. So list, I want to do list style, none. Okay, and then we also want to deal with the links. So let's do navbar ul lia. Let's do color white. Okay, so we have our white links. Wait a minute, why is it still underlined? Oh, I did text decoration underline. This should be none. All right, so next thing we want to do is separate them because we don't want them right on top of each other. So let's add a padding here, and let's just do 0.75 rem. Notice I'm using rem for most things, paddings and stuff like that. And then let's save that, see what we get. Good. Now I'm also going to add a margin on the we're going to do a margin on the left and right. So margin, let's do 0 and then 0.25 rem on the left and right. Now when I hover over these, I want to have kind of a green box around it. So let's do the hover state. So navbar ULLIA:hover, and let's do a background, and the background is going to be the same green that we have right here, the text primary. So we'll copy that, paste that in, and save that. Let's check it out. Okay, good. Now I do want the corners to be a little rounded, so let's do a border radius. Okay, and this is all stuff that we've done. So we'll do 5 pixels, and we have a little round on the corners. All right, so that's it. That's our navbar. And as you can see, it's much cleaner using flex than using floats and stuff like that. And you'll realize that as we move along, especially with the boxes and stuff like that. Also aligning in the showcase. So that's what we're going to do next, is the whole header showcase area. All right, so I'll see you in the next video.